So I'm going to get ready and get started. So my name is Chloe McKendrick. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the marketing executive here at Hertfordshire Students' Union. I actually am a recent graduate from Herts. I studied politics and international relations, and I graduated only in last September. And while I was a student, I was also president of LGBT plus Student Society for 2 years, which I really enjoyed. And yes, I identify as a cisgendered queer woman. So yeah, being a part of the Herts community as a queer student, but now as a queer staff member, and I love how diverse the population here is Herts, and just how celebratory and kind everyone is, and we really do celebrate difference here at Herts. Oh, sorry. I'm just going to kind of give a schedule of how today's going to go. So I'm going to give a very swift presentation for about 20-25 minutes. And then I'm going to stop recording, so then we can do a Q&A in confidence. You can ask me anything, you can pop it in the chat and I'll come to it at the end, or you can ask it verbally. That's absolutely fine. I just want to make sure that this is a completely safe space. This is not a place to debate. This is a time to be educated and to celebrate and to learn. So yeah, just be really respectful of other people. And yeah, just come into this workshop super open-minded. So before we go into more about pronouns and terminology, we're going to talk about kind of the networks in place here at Herts. As we know, we've got a lot of Herts, fellow Herts colleagues here today. So the university is committed to supporting our LGBTQ+ community, and as such has set up a staff LGBTQ+ network, which Connor and Chris both co-run, and I also assist in that since I've become a staff member here. And we come together and socialise. We share information, advice and ideas and experiences around LGBT+ issues. We have a huge voice within the university that can influence decision and policy making. We raise awareness of LGBT+ issues through key events such as LGBT+ History Month, which is in February, and also Pride Month, which is June. And we also enable allies to be effective voices in support of the network member activities. So you don't have to be within the LGBT+ community to be a part of the staff network. We're very welcoming of allies, and we've got quite a few allies already. So I'm going to have some contact information at the end of this presentation if you'd like to join. You often see us at the flag raisings. We're often there, and events really. We collaborate hugely with the Student Society and also the lovely EDI office and the SU and the university. So the LGBT+ Society is kind of the student alternative of the staff network, and this is runs for all Herts LGBT+ community and allies. Some of these pictures are from when I was president, so about a year old, 2 years old now, and some wonderful events that were put on. We've done drug nights in collaboration with the Students' Union. We launched the first Pride at Herts back in 2020, just before COVID. And it's just absolutely lovely. Like, students love to get involved with anything Pride related. So the society also run weekly support groups. They have a trans support group and also an LGBT+ support group, which is run by students for students. And they work closely with the staff network, the EDI office and the SU to improve life on campus for LGBT+ students. Again, they lead the calendar of events for like History Month, Pride, and they've got a very large voice here at the university, which is greatly celebrated. And amazing because they keep going from strength to strength, and they've won several awards as well. So for students who are voluntary dedicating this time to this society, it's amazing. So now we're going to go more into the workshop itself. But if you do have any questions about the staff network or the student network, student society, you can pop them in the chat, but I will leave some contact information for both networks at the end of this presentation too. So when we look at gender, people often see white and black is two distinguished things. You're either male or female, man or woman. But gender is actually a social construct that is kind of been invented through society. So we often see associations of genders with colour, gender with clothing, often, unfortunately, even down to children with toys. Girls Barbie and pink, while boys blue with monsters and racing cars, those sort of things that have been developed through society. When we're born, we don't have that necessarily construct straight away when we're growing, but that is often put on us the minute we're born. But what gender really is kind of big difference of colours, of your gender identity, a mixture of your gender, your sex, your gender expression. It all completely varies, and it's not as binary as society wants to make you believe. So everything is on a spectrum, but these are 3 different categories that people associate with gender, but they're actually 3 different things. So if we look at anatomy, which is the assigned sex, so this is what is given to you when you are born. So, you can see them now, then banners, it's a boy, it's a girl. This is often what's also revealed in gender reveals, which is not your gender, it's actually your sex, which is quite strange. But yeah, you've got one side which is male and the other is female, which I don't really need to say into too much depth, but male, you're talking male hormones, genitals, and same with females. But there's also intersex, which is a merge of both hormones and can have similar or same parts. So yeah, this is also included within the assigned sex. So although it's on a spectrum, it's not as one end at the other end. Now, gender, this is what people often get confused with sex. But this is your internal sense of self. This is who you are, who your soul is, who you are inside. And you can, again, this is on a spectrum, but it's less binary than you first think. It's not just man and woman, which people often assume is the norm. But you've got masculine leaning, femme leaning, and also gender neutral. So people who don't identify neither as male nor woman. You also get gender queer, which is kind of an umbrella term for this, neither man nor woman, and also non-binary. So your identity, you don't actually identify as neither male nor woman or anything within the binary, and that's to be respected. And normally with people who identify with gender neutral terms, or non-binary, they can use they, them pronouns. But again, it's ultimately up to preference, but we're going to talk about this a bit later on in the workshop. So also we're going to talk about, we're going to look at the gender expression. So this is how you portray your gender, your soul on your body. So we're looking at external manifestation of gender through name, pronouns, clothing, haircut, behaviour, voice, and body characteristics. And these all do have, masculine or feminine traits to them, but you can also get them that are neither. And it's very important that we separate these kind of 3 different elements that are all associated with gender and see how they can collectively come together. So looking at this kind of quick diagram, with trans people, what you feel inside, so your soul, the person you are, and what other people see, so exterior, your body, doesn't always match. And this mismatch causes a condition called gender dysphoria, which is the opposite of euphoria. And this gender dysphoria does cause trans plus people great discomfort. It's looking in the mirror and not seeing yourself back. So yeah, dysphoria is often why trans people transition. So all transitions are completely different. No 2 transitions are the same, but in most cases they do begin with social transition, which is your name, your pronoun changes, your expression, and your presentation. So this is kind of your kind of transition within society. But also you can move on to a medical transition, which is hormone surgeries, voice therapy. But not everyone follows with the medical transition, but if they do, often the social transition will come first. But it's also important to say that the current system of gender care and gender clinics within the UK is not great. The NHS are doing absolutely amazing, but the care itself and the funding is not there at the moment. A lot of trans people you will find are on waiting lists for years just to get on initial hormones, never mind surgery. And I always call it life-saving surgery, because the statistics of young trans people who do unfortunately, commit suicide or self-harm, it's incredibly high. And the fact that this medical assistance is not there, or you have to go private, and it really needs to be re-looked at and reassessed, and more funding needs to be given to gender clinics. So yeah, not all trans people do transition. It's ultimately up to the person, and they don't always feel dysphoric about every part of their body. It's not like they completely hate themselves when they look themselves in the mirror. There's parts of them they do like, but there's parts of them that doesn't represent them and they want changed. Here's some key terminology that you might have seen in your everyday life. You might have seen it on social media, you might have seen it used on TV, by a colleague, by a friend, and it kind of just helps you learn more about what this terminology is. So I'm a big fan of Stonewall's glossary. And again, I love to say this, that every day I'm learning too, and it's always important just be open-minded, and I check it every day. You never know what terminology is out there, and it's just to keep open-minded and to be willing to learn. So yeah, some of the kind of terminology we have here is assigned sex. So this is what you was assigned at birth. Assigned male at birth, assigned female at birth. Again, if we refer back to those baby banners, when a baby's born, it's a girl, it's a boy. It really associates with that. Now, cisgendered is your assigned sex and your gender identity match. So I am cisgender because I was assigned female at birth and identify as a woman. So these both match. But some people, so people who are transgender, their assigned sex and gender identity don't match. So they may be born with biologically male genitals, but their identity as a woman doesn't match those. So they are transgender. So a trans plus woman is a woman who was assigned male at birth, and trans man was a man who was assigned female at birth. And non-binary was someone whose identity does not squarely fit into male or female, can be assigned male, female, or intersex at birth. Non-binary is an umbrella term and can represent a single identity depending on the person. So yeah, again, non-binary doesn't fit on the spectrum that we discussed in prior slides, but it can be an umbrella term that identifies with gender queer, with gender neutral, but again, it can be an identity in itself. Some outdated versus correct terms. This is actually quite a recent slide that I brought around in February, and it was because the pronoun workshops I'd been running before, I've been running them for about 2 or 3 years now. Since I first started doing them, and within the workshop, the first workshop, some terminology had become incredibly outdated, and it's important that as a person who actively advocates to get pronouns used in everyday life, I'm still learning every day, and I think it's so important that you're always there and you're willing to remain open-minded. And if you do mess up or you do use the wrong terminology, it's perfectly fine. Just it's an accident, apologize and move on. But yeah, some of the terms that I've actually used previously is female to male, male to female. You may see these a lot on social media, but again, these are quite outdated. Biologically male, female, again, and preferred pronouns. My lovely friend Sheetal, who was on the LGBT plus society, and they identify as gender queer. They said, why is it preferred pronouns? Because it's your pronouns. There's nothing preferred about it. You don't want people to use those, but they can use others, if that makes sense. If your preference is he, him, it's allowing people to use she, her. So at the end of the day, there's no need for preferred pronouns. It's your pronouns, personal pronouns, or just pronouns. They're yours. Nothing preferred about it. Again, trans man, trans woman is kind of the correct terminology, and assigned sex. So pronouns, what are they? So a quick Google search gave me this lovely definition of a word that can function as a noun phrase used by itself, and that refers either to the participants in the discourse or someone or something mentioned elsewhere in this discourse. So my first knowledge of pronouns probably was when I was in school. I think in literacy, and you're taught about he, she, they, it's so many different pronouns, and people often think it's just a part of the language of learning and growing up, but actually there's a huge importance of using pronouns to the LGBT plus community in particular, but internationally, because your pronouns are used instead of your name, and they are an identity. And if you use the incorrect pronouns, you can be misgendering people. So a look at some of the different pronouns you can get. You'll see she, her, he, him out there. Also, they, them. They, them is a gender neutral term. You may think, oh, that's a plural term. Well, actually, through English language, through history, it's been used as a singular pronoun. Often, I love to give the example of, if you're at a bar and someone leaves their wallet on the side by the bar and you don't know who it is, you'll say to the bartender, they have left their wallet here. You won't associate who's their pronouns through, because you don't know them, they're a complete stranger. And I think letting people know that you do it in your everyday life without even thinking about it, it's, you want to make it into more common and more relatable, and that you're consciously doing it too, to the point that it's so subconscious, you just do it in your everyday life. We've got some more gender neutral terms, which is they, them, here. Again, this is gender neutral. People can use this term. It's ultimately people's preference, but again, because there is a huge association of they, them as just a plural term, people often use this term instead, these pronouns instead. And people can use more than one set of pronouns. You're not glued down to just she, her, they, them. You can get she, they, he, they, she. People who don't have preference, what pronouns you do use. But again, I'm perfectly fine with she, her, or they, them, because they, them's a gender neutral term, so it's not association of my gender. So a slide here about what can you do to support the trans community as a colleague, a friend, brother, sister, son, daughter, mother, father, friends, colleagues, youth workers we've got today. And firstly, don't use dead name. So dead name occurs when someone, intentionally or not, refers to a person who's transgender by the name they used before they transition. Again, people, the trans community completely understand that your habits are not going to change overnight. It's not a thing, if you've grown up for 20 years calling someone by one name, and they have transitioned and they do want to use an alternative name, then just, it's not good. You are going to slip up a few times, and that's absolutely fine. But when you intentionally use it, you're in an argument with someone, you decide to use it as a kind of throwaway comment, that's not on. It's actually incredibly offensive. So yes, don't use dead names. I think the uni is doing so much these days to make sure that your name is up there, is easily changeable. There's a lot way we need to come, but you can change your name for trans students or trans staff. They can change their name, and I think it's important that staff as well keep up to date with looking at records in case there is any name changes, because I remember there's been a few instances that I know of that people have been called by their dead name, which is not entirely intentional, but the things hasn't been put in place to prevent that happening. Additionally, use gender neutral language to know someone's pronouns. For example, using they, them, and people, folks when referring to a group, instead of assuming everyone in the group to be male or female. Again, this is very much for lecturers or teaching staff or people that work with a large group of young people or people in general. Don't go into, I find myself doing it, and I'm never perfect, and a lot of people still do it if, walking into a group, it's like, you right, guys? Just be careful about what you use, because you don't know if you're intentionally misgendering. Again, it could be absolutely accidental, and if you are called out, apologize and move on and make that conscious decision not to do it again. But yeah, use gender neutral language, especially when you're meeting someone for the first time. They, them never goes amiss. Don't keep using the wrong pronouns, even when you know you made a mistake. Again, this is when we're talking about intentional behaviour, that you're trying to offend someone of the trans community. It's not on. Make that conscious decision not to use the incorrect pronouns. And when you start using them every day, the correct pronouns, it will just become everyday life. It will become conscious. And if you misgender someone, apologise, correct yourself, and move on. Don't make a huge deal of it. Again, apologise, move on to the conversation, and just make that decision not to do that in the future. So how can you help normalise pronouns? This is really important. I love this is one of my favorite slides on this PowerPoint. And firstly, introduce yourself with your pronouns. Don't be worried about or fearful that going into a meeting, a Teams meeting, or going into, maybe a one-to-one with a student, introduce yourself with your pronouns. Like I did at the start of this presentation, I said, hello, my name's Chloe, and I use she, her pronouns. I do it in my everyday life now. It's almost instinctual that as soon as I say, hi, I'm Chloe, I put my pronouns there too. And that's really, really important. I think a lot of the time, when you introduce yourself to a new person, if I say, hello, my name's Chloe, and I use she, her pronouns, the person will reciprocate that back. So they will also introduce their name and their pronoun. And it's just opening up that conversation. You never know if you've got a young trans student in your class, and you introduce yourself with the pronouns, they might find you as an incredibly safe person, and they might feel like they can be open to you. Also, add your pronouns to your social media bios and names. LinkedIn, Instagram are amazing at this. They've actually got sections on profiles that you can put your pronouns. I also believe TikTok does, which is amazing. It's a huge advancement. I think it's very, very new that they've done this, so within the last year. But you can also put your pronouns in your bio. Unfortunately, Teams doesn't have an option about pronouns just yet. But fingers crossed that will come within the foreseeable. But again, you can add it to your names on accounts, Facebook, have a little bio underneath where you can put your pronouns. And yeah, add your pronouns to your email signature. So everyone within the Students' Union do have their pronouns in their email signature. And I've actually seen it, across Herts, how many people have got their pronouns in their email signature. You don't know who you'll be messaging day to day, and you might come across a colleague or a student and who see that and just feel how open they are that, you're sharing your pronouns, and they'll be happy to do the same. You can also wear a pronoun badge. I've got two today that says my pronouns, which is she, her, and ask me about my pronouns. Because I love opening the conversation and talking to people, whether that's in the Starbucks queue or queuing for the loos or anything. I love having that conversation with people and seeing that pronoun badge in case people are quite fearful of, should I ask their pronouns? I'm not sure. It's right there. And that in itself can open up the conversation. So we do have some still in the SU office on College Lane, which is at the welcome desk. So do feel free, if you want a nice pronoun badge, to pop down there. And we're hoping to get some more for welcome in September too. Again, ask people their pronouns. Don't be afraid to ask people their pronouns. If we want to normalise this conversation in everyday life, people need to be willing to potentially put themselves in slightly uncomfortable positions. If they don't want to, if they're quite fearful of how a person responds, just open the conversation. Open the conversation, especially within a professional environment or your personal life. ask people their pronouns, don't be fearful. But if you are slightly hesitant, you've always got the pronoun badges, or introducing yourself with your preferred pronoun, with your pronouns, and people often reciprocate that back. And lastly, never assume someone's pronouns. Don't go into the conversation and automatically, because someone might be quite masculine appearing, that they use he, him pronouns. We need to kind of get out of that society mindset of, because someone might be masculine appearance or feminine appearance, they use feminine or masculine pronouns. So it's really important to stop associating and go into the conversation using gender neutral language. Folks, they, them, ZZ. My ultimate go-to is they, them. And I think even when in my everyday life of talking to people, I use they, them. But in my professional life for example, I ran a few student staff interviews a few weeks ago, and when I was writing up the feedback, because I was unsure on their pronouns, I used they, them. So it's really important, because they, them, such a gender neutral term, it's non-offensive, and you've got no mistake of misgendering. So as promised, we're going to come to an end of this pronoun workshop. Here are the contact details for the staff network and the LGBT plus society, which you can, if you could screenshot or make a note, I can always put them in the chat afterwards. They're both amazing networks and societies, and if you want to share the details to your colleagues, your students, your friends here at Hearts, feel very welcome to. So I'm going to open up the Q&A now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and yeah, if anyone has any questions, please be respectful, but you can put them in the comments, or you can put your hand up and I will come to you swiftly. And yeah, thank you all for listening. Yeah, if anyone has any questions.